Hi everyone, my name is Dalton Sykes, and today with my teammates Ihao, Henrique, Will, and Bobby, we're going to talk to you about hydrophobicity and superhydrophobicity, as well as how nanotechnology enables us to better understand and explore these subjects. To begin, let's do a quick review over what hydrophobicity and superhydrophobicity are. Hydrophobicity can be broken down into two parts: hydro, meaning water, and phobicity, which comes from the suffix phobic, meaning fearing or avoiding. Hydrophobicity, then, means water-fearing or avoiding polar molecules like water. A good example of this would be like trying to give your cat a bath. Because cats are by nature very hydrophobic, it's very difficult to get them in a bath of water. When discussing materials, there are two important ways you can increase or modify that material or object's hydrophobicity. The first is to change its surface pattern or topology. You can do this either on the nanoscale or on the microscale, and later in the presentation, Bobby and Ihao are going to discuss this in more detail. Additionally, you can chemically modify the surface of an object so that it presents more nonpolar chemical groups. By doing so, they naturally segregate themselves away from polar molecules like water, and therefore increase the hydrophobicity of the object. Now that we better understand what hydrophobicity is, as well as a few ways of increasing the hydrophobicity of an object, let's briefly touch on what it means to be superhydrophobic. Well, much like Super Mario is better than regular Marios, Superman is better than regular men, and Nicki Minaj's super bass is better than regular basses, superhydrophobicity essentially takes the concept of hydrophobicity to the extreme. Superhydrophobicity can be used when an object has a contact angle between its surface and a droplet of water of greater than 150 degrees. While this is somewhat arbitrary and flexible, suffice it to say that a superhydrophobic object extremely despises contact with water and does everything in its power to reduce the contact between the two. There are many examples of both hydrophobic and superhydrophobic objects, both in nature and synthetically made. So let's look at a few of those now.
Our unlikely heroines are fire ants, a colony several 100,000 strong. Rapacious, tenacious, and industrious, they are impossible to eradicate as long as their queen is alive. But their colony faces just such a threat. The river beside it is flooding. The deluge rushes in. What else to do then but swim? The colony floats out as a living raft. The most precious members of the colony, the larvae and the queen ant, are kept safely dry in the middle. The queen ant can give birth to some 3 million ants over her lifetime. If they can reach dry land, they stand a good chance of rebuilding.
We hope that you've enjoyed this background on hydrophobicity and superhydrophobicity, and we now like to move our discussion into how hydrophobicity can be modified through surface modification, as led by Ihao and Bobby, as well as how it can be modified by chemical modification, as led by Will and Henrique. Following this, we'll split up into 4 small groups for some hands-on activities visualizing hydrophobicity through activities such as magnets, bed of nails, a water droplet race, and the investigation of an actual superhydrophobic surface. Then we'll reconvene into a big group for a question and answer session, as well as taking an understanding survey.
As we have already seen in the introduction section, in nature, lotus leaf is a good example showing superhydrophobic effect. Its contact angle can be high to about 161 degrees. Also, for animal, Many insects' legs are made of superhydrophobic surface, which makes them float on the surface of pond. Topological factor plays an important role in superhydrophobic surface. The behavior of a water droplet on a nanostructure surface is schematically shown here. Water can either penetrate the asperities or suspended above the asperities. In either cases, much higher contact angles are observed than those observed for a corresponding flat surface. For window state, because the nanostructure increases the interaction area between the water drop and the hydrophobic surface, less actual area are needed for the thermal equilibrium. Therefore, the contact angle can be increased and the hydrophobicity can be increased. For Cassie, the situation becomes a little bit complex because the air pillow also attend the interactions between water drop and the surface. But generally, the Cassie state also increases the hydrophobicity. The topological factor contributing superhydrophobicity of lotus leaf is shown here. As you can see, it's a hierarchical structure. The microscale feature is shown in graph B, and the nanoscale feature is shown in graph C. The hierarchical structure of lotus leaf increased the contact angle from 110 to 160, from hydrophobic to superhydrophobic. How scientists make superhydrophobic surface using nanotechnology to mimic those in nature? There are generally two approaches. One is top-down approach, and the other is bottom-up approach. There are mainly four methods in top-down approach: template method, nanoimprint method, photolithography method, and plasma etching method. The advantage of top-down approach is its high precise structural control. In bottom-up approach, main methods include chemical deposition, colloidal assembly, layer-by-layer deposition, and sol-gel method. The advantage of bottom-up approach is its low cost compared to top-down method. The most impressive method in top-down approach is called the template method. As you can see in this picture, by using a negative PDMS template, scientists can precisely replicate the structure of lotus leaf. Also, nanostructure can be perfectly copied. Good results has also been achieved by using bottom-up approach. In this picture, a nanoneedle structure was grown using chemical-based deposition. This nanoneedle structure gives a contact angle high to about 178 degrees, which is the highest in the world. Here is a video showing how water drop moves on the superhydrophobic surface made by nanotechnology. As you can see, the water drop is not stick to the surface at all, and it just rolls off the surface when there is a tilt. By using the electron microscopy, we can clearly see the nano and microstructure of this superhydrophobic surface. It is a hierarchical structure. The flower is in the order of micrometer, and the wrinkle on the flower is in the range of nanometer.
What is hydrophobicity? As we already know, the word can be broken down into hydro, which means water, and phobic, which means fear. The dictionary defines hydrophobicity as something that repels, tends not to combine with, or incapable of dissolving water.
But how does that work? As Ihao and Bobby showed, topology could change the hydrophobicity of the surface. What if the topology effect does not exist? Can we still make the material still fear water? The answer is yes. To understand that, we first need to look into the water chemistry and within its chemistry, polarity.
Water is a simple molecule composed of one oxygen atom and two hydrogen atoms. The polarity within these atoms provides water with the properties that make it unique and life-sustaining.
Polarity represents the unequal sharing of electrons within a molecule. For water, the bonding between the oxygen atom and the two hydrogen atoms is like an electron tug of a war between strong Henrik and weak me. Oxygen is a larger atom with more protons in its nucleus than hydrogen. These positive charges are like a person's physical strengths. They are able to attract the negatively charged electrons in the bond, just like a strong individual is able to overcome a weaker individual in a tug of war. So oxygen is able to attract more than its fair share of electrons.
Because hydrogen is smaller and has less strength or fewer protons, it loses the tug of war and attracts fewer than its fair share of electrons. So the oxygen in water behaves as a negative end and the hydrogen atoms behave positively. The bonds within a single water molecule are called polar covalent bonds. Covalent means that the electrons are shared, but as we just learned, polar means that the electrons are not shared in an equal manner.
Negative and positive attract. The negative oxygen is attracted to the hydrogen atoms in other neighboring water molecules. A special type of bond forms in between water molecules known as hydrogen bond. Hydrogen bonds don't just form to water either. They can form between a water molecule and a different substances, like polar substrate, for example, sugar, or ionic substance like toothpaste.
Water's ability to stick itself is called cohesion, while its ability to stick to other substances is called adhesion. However, what happens if water finds a nonpolar substance? A nonpolar substance, like fats and oil, has a fair sharing of electrons or is a symmetrical molecule and therefore does not act as a negative or positive end. So the water cannot form the hydrogen bonds and does not interact with the substance. So we see this repelling effect of hydrophobic substances on water.
So how does all this apply to the coating of surfaces? As it turns out, coating sprays generally contain silane. Silanes are silicon chemicals that have a symmetric structure and are therefore nonpolar. However, to enhance the hydrophobic effect, we insert a nonpolar hydrocarbon chain that provides the hydrophobic properties to the surface. These nonpolar entities compete with hydrogen bonding in water molecules. Therefore, there is no adhesion between water and the surface.